overlooked over years. So they gave a pass. I don't know if it was public officers law, but they gave a pass. It was a residency requirement. But I believe, and I could be wrong, that there were individuals in situations that needed to make a decision of whether or not to move back to the county to retain their jobs. They were given a certain amount of time to do that. I'm just going off. I think it might have been 6 months, or it might have been a year to say, look at. There was another situation down there that someone had actually left the county to be a caregiver. This is what I'm thinking about. Somebody leaves the county to be a caregiver for a parent. They were appointed properly. They were there properly because the executive, and nobody knew that they had left because they were going to give care to the parent. It was like a county over, but very still within proximity to where they could travel to their job. And I'm just wondering when situations like that happen, I just don't want to get into, my vote is always going to be to go, I think it would always be, to go to the state legislature and ask for reprieve every time this happens. I think because we're doing it here. I don't know how I could look at it any different, whether I thought the person was doing a good job, not a good job. I just don't know how I can look at it any different than that.
You know, I guess I would liken this to, in land use, you know, it's a non-conforming use. In the past, it was overlooked. We're just making sure all the paperwork is where it should be.
I just want to add one thing. When I was chair of education and government, I did look at all the aspects of, well, the historian and the director of what Kelly does and the health director is vastly different. We have to be aware of that while we're just speaking of these two names so blatantly. So I have the backup reasons of why I'm voting for this, not because I'm related or they're my best friends. I think they do a good job, and I would be comfortable because I trust the executive in the job, and I think that the person who is going to be in that job would do the best interests of the county. So that's why. Thank you.
Further discussion. Go ahead.
I would like to suggest that in the bodies of the resolutions themselves are fine, but in the titles of the two resolutions, that you strike the words public officers, just public officer. It would not be public officer law, which the legislature would be amending. It would be the law that relates to each of the two specific provisions, such as the public health law and that sort of thing. As I say, the body of it's fine, but I would suggest that you take the words public officer out of there and just say New York State law.
And vote?
Yes. You can treat it as a typographical error as far as I'm concerned, and the other one hasn't even been sponsored and seconded yet.
Is that okay with you, Legislator Wheeler?
Yes. Thank you.
Hearing no other discussion, recommendation of the board, move to, recommendation of the committee, move to full board.
Move it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, second resolution. I'll read it out. Same it's a mouthful, so I'll summarize. Same resolution, just in the case of the Montgomery County Public Health Director, modifying New York State law to allow for residency in Montgomery or adjoining county. I'll sponsor. Do I have a second? Legislator Wheeler? Discussion. Recommendation of the committee.
Move it.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Other. Any topics for discussion under other pertaining to the charter, rules of procedure at this time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This evening we had a presentation from Jeff Smith, and I like that kind of backup so that we have a little more information with respect to the request for resolutions. And the sheriff mentioned that the old 9-point thing. I would like to see something like that implemented for our use when someone is requesting a resolution of the board or a resolution for a transfer. I'm not quite sure of the mechanism by which we would implement it, because we certainly don't want to be directing department heads, and that's not for us to do. So, but I'm just wondering if perhaps you through committee could work with the county executive to come by some, just a simple form, some format. I got something that I would propose, but it doesn't have to be this way verbatim. But I would just pass this on to you for your consideration, and request that we follow through and so that we can to work with Matt to do something.
Thank you. Any other? Legislator Quackenbush.
To Legislator Duchesse's point, if it's something that you folks like, I would suggest replacing that in the rules of procedure, that the 9 points, I believe, aren't they in there, Cheryl? In the
Yeah.
rules of procedure. I would suggest replacing, with whatever we come up with, if it's this and it's fine, it's fine. But actually replace that, and you can still work out the mechanisms or the mechanics of how you.
We'll work on that, and with the executive, I'll work on that with the executive, and
And we've been doing that on somewhat of an informal basis. Like, for example, with Jeff, I said, when I reviewed the resolution, I said, well, you better have some good backup here. And he, they're all willing to do that. It's just, as soon as I'm told what exactly you'd like to see, then we have no problem implementing that. But I need to know exactly what you guys would like to see. And if you just give me the format, we'll take it from there.
great. Any other? Legislator Kelly.
So has anybody thought about or read the rules and procedure that was presented to people, to the members at last committee meeting of the Education Committee? I believe we tabled it to the next committee meeting.
There was no motion at the last. If you would like to
I was just wondering,
discuss, there's been no motion to amend the rules of procedure. This was the suggestions that you had brought up were discussed. Legislator Duchesse discussed this sort of backup for proposals, but there has not been a motion to change rules of procedure. Yes, Legislator Quackenbush.
So, I guess I'll ask this question. Legislator Duchesse just passed something around. Moving forward, how are we going to, do we want to put a resolution on this month's meeting to entertain that or some form of that? Or are you going to have a resolution to do that for the March committee meeting? Because otherwise you're just going to
Yeah.
go month after month
Of course.
without.
And I think
Or let the legislators introduce how.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think that's Legislator Duchesse, with his recommendation, is asking that the county exec and I sit down, go over this. After agreeing on something, he and I can put together a resolution and have it for March committee. But moving forward, if there's changes that you would like to see with rules of procedure to amend, I would recommend that you bring them forward in this meeting with the appropriate, or bring them to my attention ahead of time.
So moving forward, we could hypothetically, if I had something in the rules of procedure I'd like to see changed, the proper protocol should be to go ahead and give them to you as chair in advance so you can segregate to the committees, bring it up at the next committee meeting and you can all talk about it. So even a legislator who's not on the committee could forward that on to you and ask you to put it on committee.
Of course.
Okay.
And have that resolution. I think there was some concern, and there was concern last month with not having written resolutions on the docket. So I think moving forward, that is how we should proceed, is we should have these resolutions ahead of time so everybody knows what we're voting on.
Okay, so then put that on the docket since I dispensed it to you, to the rest of the members.
So you would like to make a motion?
I don't know.
This
discussion
evening?
on it, we all said we would read it over and discuss changes.
Okay, well, let's discuss it. Key points, I believe,
Has anyone read it? Okay.
gets.
Good.
Would you like to summarize the main points in the alterations?
A couple of things that stood out, I think, to strengthen the budget process. Once a budget is passed and adopted, and let's say the sheriff or some other department comes in and asks for amendments to the budget as adopted from the previous year, I think that I would like to see a 2/3 vote to adopt, to amend an adopted budget, just so that we take the budgeting process a little bit more serious. We're adopting a budget so that we have a guideline in place, not just to say, oh, yeah, check, we adopted the budget on time and moving forward. Let's see. Another one that I had for privilege of the floor, I would like to include the executive in that section, and department heads or commissioners or outside agencies, especially when they have an issue that may have arisen since the deadline of when they need a resolution presented to the clerk, so that we're not pushing things off another month. Those were a couple of two major things.
Discussion on those points. Legislator Wheeler.
Well, at first, I did not agree with the 2/3 support for the budget amendments. I do now. I do support Legislator Kelly on that. Coming into the new form of government, I will do that, hopefully when we pass the new budget. When there are amendments, we can be, if there is something to be amended, we can at least be, if not full board, we can at least be 2/3. Well, this was a tough one for me, because I know the difficulties of 2/3. We talked for an extensive period of time, and I thank you for that, because communication is the only way to get things done. And I can talk to department heads, I can talk to the executive, but unless we communicate as a body, we won't get things done. So I thank Legislator Kelly for that, and I will support him on that, as well as the privilege of the floor. I like both of those.
Legislator Quackenbush.
I actually was reading what he was presenting last time wrong until he explained it to me. I took it another way, but I then found out after it was once the budget's passed.
Mhm.
Only once the budget's passed, then it isn't beforehand where you're just hodgepodging around. But I support it too, because the budget's already passed, we know what we're doing or should. And so I also have no problem with it now that I understand it.
Any other discussion on the proposed changes? I believe, Legislator Kelly, you're presenting these as a full package due to changes in numerous rules, not a rule-by-rule basis. So would you motion to adopt these at the February meeting? Legislator Quackenbush.
I go back to a point that Duke had sent out a while back. I don't want to hold hostage one, although it might be a little more work for us. If I like what Duke's presentation is for the backup, but I don't like the, whatever the other one was that you said, I don't want to hold one hostage to the other, and I agree with Duke on that. I would prefer to see when we change rules of procedure, that they are on their own merits and that we do, all resolutions really, because I think it holds a lot of value when he said that you do end up killing the whole thing just because of one thing you don't like. I mean, I would probably, if I really, so I like the idea of keeping it separate. As cumbersome as it may be at the beginning, once we get this figured out, I think it'll be, you know, because there's some that may not support, like with the budget amendment, but they do support. That's my opinion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, typically, when someone moves to divide a question, if there are two individual questions, that's usually done even just as a matter of courtesy.
Of course.
And so I think, and I don't have any specific issues with these, but it is nice if we can just vote on them individually.
Then I would like to recommend that for the March meeting, that there be changes. This one I will take a look at personally with the county exec. Any changes that any other legislators on the committee or not that would like to bring up for discussion, please forward along to myself and Cheryl, and we will put those all together on the docket for committee, rule by rule. Any other? Look for motion to adjourn.
I have
Nope.
I received a call from my town supervisor, Tom Canterbury, and I think Martin did also, in reference, they're trying to retain council, and according to the charter, there's a limitation on the council, and also there's another position, auditor, I believe, where they can't have outside employment beside the county. And I just wanted to throw it, I told him I would throw it out for discussion, and that's it.
Okay. Part of,
The other, yes, sorry.
yep, go ahead.
The other thing too, one way or the other, they were interested in us making a decision because they're kind of in limbo. I think there's two municipalities involved.
And that would require an amendment to the charter, because outlined in section, is it titled Article 8? Yes. Section 8.01 restricts the county attorney. It reads, the county attorney may not represent any municipality while in office. Doug, with this clause, section 801, can this be amended through resolution vote only, since you are not an elected, or since the county attorney is not an elected position?
It's not so much as to whether it's an elected position or not, but the question goes to, would the change diminish the authority of any elected officials? I think the answer to that question in this instance would be no.
Okay.
It would not only with respect to me, but with any other elected officials. It really doesn't apply to any, have any bearing on any elected officials. So I would say the answer would be yes, you could, the legislature could amend it. It would not have to go to a referendum.
By resolution only. With that in mind, and since it is a time-sensitive matter, would the committee, of course, we don't have it drafted in front of us right now, but since it is a time-sensitive matter and there are municipalities that would like to retain the county attorney for their services, I think it may be appropriate to pass a resolution on to full board to strike, let me just read it through once, I believe only one sentence that reads, the county attorney may not represent any municipality while in office. It says any municipality, not any other municipality.
That's the way it's written.
Okay, that's how it's written. So it's even worse than at first glance. County attorney can't represent any municipality. So I would actually, I would like to put forth a resolution to strike that line in amending the charter so that we can, move forward with that. And do you think that is appropriate, that we can do that?
I think you can do it. Whether it's appropriate or not, it affects me personally. I'd have a comment or two to make about it, but obviously it's up to the legislature whether it wants to proceed down this road of making a potential change. I will make a comment though, when we're done with the legislators.
Discussion, Legislator Quackenbush.
I know it's not on a resolution right now to discuss, but I guess we're discussing it. At first glance, I didn't have an issue with it. I'm just trying to think right now though, are there situations, could there be situations that arise that somehow really puts the county attorney in a situation, for instance, well, I guess the sewer district isn't a good example, although they're a municipality, it could be they are a municipality, right, in a sense, the sewer district, or no?
No, they're under county government. They're on Montgomery.
Well, for instance, the village of Nelliston is involved with that,
Yes.
that issue at the sewer district.
Yes.
There's litigation, so, if you were the county attorney and the village of Nelliston attorney, I don't know that situation is a great example, but is there I don't know if it's in our best interest to put you in that position by allowing that to happen. And maybe it doesn't happen, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the issues of where you're gonna be potentially in conflict here, where we need to have you representing us.
I can tell you this. I've been county attorney for 16 full calendar years at the present time. And during those 16 full calendar years, at no point have I represented any less than 2 other municipalities, sometimes as many as 4 other municipalities. And in the entire 16 years, there's never been a situation where there was a conflict of interest.
If there were.
It's a possibility. It is a possibility. One of the municipalities I represented long before I started as county attorney, actually, 23 years ago. I don't know why, and this was brought up by Supervisor Coddington, questioned it right at the very beginning of the discussion on the charter 2 years ago, or close to 2 years ago. I could understand it being there if there had been a track record of problems, but there haven't been. As I say, it was 16 years, and there was never a time when I had to step away from either the county or any of the municipalities that I was representing. I suspect, I don't know this, that it may have been put in there because some of the counties, many of the counties today, in fact the trend is, have full-time county attorneys who don't have other work. And that isn't the case here.
Legislator Kuchas.
Could it have been the intent that the language said something to the effect that the county attorney shall not serve any other municipality in the event of a conflict of interest?
Well, that would be a professional question, and yet a licensed attorney shouldn't be doing that anyway, whether it says it in the charter or not.
Right.
So that's the language that ended up in the charter.
I think,
And what, if I may, what Legislator Diamond is referring to is, the town of Canterbury at the moment is kind of on hold because I have not accepted reappointment from them to represent them. I've represented them for several years now, and they've indicated that they wanted me to continue, and they said they'd hold off a little ways, but obviously they can't hold off forever.
And this is one of the issues addressed in the Red Line Charter that our legislative research specialist is now working with. But it is a time-sensitive matter. So there's room for, this is something that we could potentially do before putting forth other amendments to the charter, but that's up to the committee.
Yeah.
Legislative
I'm
will.
essentially offering up that language as a substitute to the committee, if you don't consider it.
I'm supportive of it, absolutely. I think there's a lot of errors in this. And at NISAC, Steve Aquario and Patrick Cummings, they're ready to come in and meet with us whenever you're ready. I absolutely support what legislator Kuchar said, so ready to move on.
So it sounds like there's a resolution.
Sponsored by Bar, I think.
Yep,
So,
well, I'll second, you sponsored, I'll second it.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll sponsor the language being. Can you, would you like to repeat what you?
County attorney shall serve no other municipality where there is a conflict of interest, excuse me.
There's a sponsor and a second. Discussion.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Where there are, what was it?
Where there is a conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it seems to me that that's the way it's supposed to be anyway, but regardless of whether we state as much, it would be a resolution. And it's just disconcerting to me, especially I guess this evening and on the heels of two other events where we bump up against civil service law, county health law, I don't know what the other one is for records management. And there's like a whole series of laws that are in place that are proving to be just an inconvenience to us. And perhaps they are unnecessary in the view of the legislature, but I tend to think that a lot of discussion was had before some of these laws were put in place, and that there was perhaps some justification. I don't think coincidentally this State Civil Service Commission and state legislature just accidentally made passed all of these laws by mistake, so that it was meant to be a roadblock for us to do our jobs. I just think we ought to take some of these laws that are in place a little more seriously. And this seems to be just one more thing. I mean, we're just, I think, 2 votes short of meeting at some coffee shop to work these things out for ourselves and go home. I'm repeating myself, but the laws are in place for a reason.
Well, I think what we're discussing here has nothing to do with New York State law. It has to do with our charter that was adopted by referendum. And the previous Board of Supervisors knew that there were many changes that needed to be made. They chose not to address them. It's our duty we have a charter that right now reads, the county attorney may not represent any municipality while in office. I think it would be unwise of us I think it's something that needs to be, we can't work with a document that says this. Now, if this is something that you would, I'm not sure, what the suggestion is, but we need to respect the law, and right now, there's things in this charter that make it very difficult.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you say we need to respect the law, but I think that parenthetically, you're suggesting that we need to respect the law and change it where we don't.
We need to have a working charter that is able to meet our needs as a county. There's things in here that are contradictory to each other. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think when you have 2 contradictory clauses in a governing document, that's not something you can really work with. But again, that's not coming from a law perspective.
Mr. Chairman, just if I can finish my point and I'll be done. I plan to support many of the changes that Legislator Kelly has done forward. It's not that I'm opposed to making changes where perhaps they're a little bit more justified. It's just that it seems like this is yet again another instance where we are making an accommodation. And it's just one more time. This is the third time now in 2 meetings. Really the fourth if you consider the 2 this evening.
Legislator Quackenbush.
I don't have the red line version in front of me, but I don't remember that being one of the items that Mr. Aquario pointed out, did he?
It is.
It is?
Yeah. Good. Well,
What was the, could you read to us what is,
I believe it is.
Terry's gonna bring it over to you.
I mean, could you read what it, did he say that, what was their fix to it, I guess?
They didn't even address it. There's so much in this.
But my point is they didn't address it, so they must think it was okay and it was the intent of not only the charter commission, but the voters.
Don't you remember that they asked us about this when they were here? And they literally said, we have to leave this to you. And we didn't address it. We said we were leaving it to the legislative body to address it.
That or this document?
That part of this
Okay.
document, yes. In the Education and Government Committee meeting, which a lot of it was almost the whole Board of Supervisors that was there. And we have to pass this resolution because this needs to be addressed, period. I crossed it off, actually, where they
It
can't
starts
work
on the
with another-
6th line down. The county attorney may not represent any municipality while in office. If
No.
interpreted literally, the county attorney cannot represent the county.
Right.
So, this is,
Well, I don't think.
Mr. Chairman, the suggestion here though is not to change what might be construed as a literal interpretation of that. It's to go beyond that, isn't it?
I believe the verbiage is the county attorney shall not represent any other municipality when there's a conflict of interest. I think that's, right now it seems like, we'd have to question the Charter Commission for the intent of that. So with that in mind, it is a time-sensitive matter. Legislator Diamond brought it forth because it is such. There have been questions about this, but if the committee does not want to forward this on, that's the decision of the committee.
What is the time sensitivity? I don't understand what's time sensitive about it?
Well, I guess what Legislator Diamond brought up is right now and Legislator Kelly agreed with that there are municipalities that have.
I'm not making a joke, but what you talk about the assassination, there's more than one lawyer in the county.
Yeah.
I mean, if they needed to hire somebody temporarily because they had they could hire somebody temporarily, and then if this come out in where it was passed, then they go ahead and put Doug on it, but.
Well, I think
Go,
Chair.
Legislator Diamond.
My point, I voted to move the previous resolution to the full board, and I would vote to move this current resolution to the full board, just so the full board can make a decision one way or the other. I agree a lot with what Legislator Duchessis said on both issues, and my point is just let's resolve it at the full board meeting this month.
Further discussion. There's a resolution to change the language in section 8.01 of the Montgomery County Charter. There is a sponsor and a second. Recommendation of the committee.
Move it to the full board.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Other business?
Motion to adjourn.
I had other.
Oh, sorry.
Just a point of order. The resolution for the legislative aid came out of this committee, and the reason I'm bringing this up is that when discussing it, part of her duties was to continue to handle transportation And I feel on the charter that that's contrary to the charter. The county executive should oversee the person who's handling day-to-day activity. Legislative body has no business being involved in the day-to-day operation of the county. And I wanted to throw that out there for discussion, and mention, at one point, shared services, and county executive said that, and the other members of the board said, no, that's not gonna work. Yet, we're giving our legislative research assistant duties that she reports to the clerk as a further discussion on that. So I just have a hard time with the clerk or legislative aide being in charge of transportation. And I think it needs to be corrected.
Legislative Quackenbush.
I totally understand where Roy's coming from with that. I do know, though, that I've had a conversation with Ken Rose, and I don't know that what he was suggesting was going to be long-term. It just happened to be something that would be happening now for a while. I don't know, maybe we want to ask Ken. But I don't disagree with what Roy's saying to a point, but it seemed to be the fit right now.
Here's background on the transportation, so everybody understands it going back years ago. Transportation was always in the board of supervisors budget. So mass transportation, those line items are currently in I think they're currently now in the actual budget, still in the legislative line item, or even the county executives line item. There was a position called mobility coordinator, which was developed, which came over under my control. However, that budgeted line item amount still remained in the board of supervisors budget. So I didn't even have authorization to cite vouchers or anything. I always had to work through the board office to take care of the vouchering and everything. So it never fully transferred over to my office as far as the budget was concerned. The individual that was at mobility coordinator is now the legislative aide, most familiar with it. It's minor paperwork throughout the course of the year to take care of the transportation grants that are in and out to ground transportation. We just felt that it really, honestly, making it out of both of us, which we seem to do in this county, but that's my personal opinion.
I guess we can take a look at that, Doug, maybe, and see if there is a conflict there and how to address it if there is.
My other point is, Chair, is that if there's a complaint about the transportation, who's going to handle the complaint? I mean, we're not responsible. We are responsible for this coordinator. Yet, so we're going to start, being involved with it. The complaint should go to Matt. It should be one of his employees that handle it.
Absolutely, and I do see how there is there needs to be clarification there, and we need to figure that out. Legislator Kuchar.
I have a question for Ken. Ken, are you still saying that those duties that we're talking about right now still fall under the previous supervisor / current legislature?
To go back even further, there used to be a mobility coordinator position that was formed for and there was a coordinator all the transportation services. When that position went away.
Excuse me, I'd like to hear what he has to say.
When that position went away back in 2010, it would have been the start of the 2011 budget. That position went away in my office. And with that, we turned everything over, that coordination went away. The coordination physically went away, and then the only thing that we administered was going back to administrative what we had before the coordinator. That was just the pass-through grants for mass transportation and the drug grants associated with transportation for the commuter runs down to Albany, along with the max. So the grants going in and out, Browns is responsible for everything else. We basically turned everything over to Browns. The only thing now is just basically shuffle the paperwork from the state
or the executive section is not in my department.
So ultimately, if it's underneath the legislative branch, then the duties she's performing fall under our budgeted line item. So that's something we have to
I
look at.
think it should be moved. I don't think it should be under our, that's my point.
Right, I don't know if that's a budget amendment or if that's something the executive does for the next budget.
I mean, I fully intended to incorporate this into next year's budget as far as making the change.
Where is this here?
Well, in the current budget this year, budget 01 is the Board of Legislators, County Executives budget. There's a line number 5630, which is bus operations. It's doesn't necessarily fall under either, like, we have the 1010 account is the legislators and all their appropriations, the 1011 is the county executives, but this is a separate appropriation for bus operations. So technically, it's under both of your budgets.
And the mobility coordinator is zeroed out.
Correct.
There's no money.
Yeah, the mobility coordinator is.
That position
10,900.
doesn't
It
exist.
does, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess that would be a Sean question, if that entire section of, you know, the 5630 could be moved to Ken's budget, but probably not until next budget year.
Further business.
I think I did have one more. Oh. Last meeting, the legislature appointed, to the Montgomery County Sanitary District Sewer Board members. And I had wanted to change that, but there was an issue with, because it was a resolution number 281, maybe legislator Quackenbush can help me out with this. Do we need to have a resolution to do away with that because it wasn't on the form? What I was trying to get at is having the county executive make all the appointments instead of this one. See, it said be appointed by the county legislative board.
Right, but it depends how, I guess, you would interpret the local law that created the sewer district, Doug, years ago. Put this language in, we just changed it from county supervisors to legislators. I think you would have to change the local law, would you not? Or would it be Matt's appointment at the member at large?
No, I'm familiar with the resolution. If the intent, it's not in the local law. The appointments were done pursuant to a series, and changed a few times, pursuant to a series of resolutions between the early 70s and this most recent one in, well, not this one, but Resolution 281 of 2013, which this references. If the intent is to have it follow the model of the charter, and by the way, you're only really talking about one individual, because the others hold the positions by virtue of the fact that they hold other positions, such as mayors or legislators. For the at-large member, if you want to have that in conformity with the charter, you would modify this resolution to have that appointment made by, well, you could either just delete the section with regard to the appointment, or state that it's to be made by the executive with confirmation by the legislature, such as is done with the other appointments that we've discussed over the past couple of months. I don't necessarily, you can if you wish to, but that you're necessarily proposing changing the fact that the 3 legislators and the 3 mayors of the territory that the sewer district services be members of that board. And this provides for that as well. The 281 of 2013 provided for that as well. You're just talking about the one appointed member.
Correct, yes. I just want to be in conformity with the charter.
And that would be very easy to accomplish if you're of a mind to do that.
I'll take a look at that resolution and talk with Matt, and we'll figure out what change needs to be made and how we want to proceed with that. Any other business?
This is it. I'm not gonna motion to- I just want to add one thing, And that's that I hope as much concentration goes to support this brand new employee who I have no idea who it is in economic development. And hopefully they're gonna take over all of the mobility coordination and transfer and everything that everybody really wants to put in this position, and start with this collaboration, communication, and optimism. And if we're ready, I'll motion to adjourn. Unless-
I'll entertain a second.
Did you have something?
Is there
Was
further
that a hand
business?
up or?
Motion to adjourn, is there a second?
All right.
Ryan, was this yours?